Hello and welcome to Airheads, a not-so-serious look at the serious business of royal rumours, gossip and gowns. I'm Tom.
And I'm Maeve.
And it's been 2 weeks and we are still talking about Prince Philip's memorial service.
I know, I had sort of thought it wouldn't be an event that would really register with us all that much.
Yeah.
Until we saw the photos of the Queen in her little car on her way there with none other than Prince Andrew sitting next to her.
I know, those blurry, grimy photos of the two of them, these thick as thieves, partners in crime.
I was like, Tom, guess who's escorting the Queen?
And it wasn't just in the car. Obviously, everyone's seen he walked her up the aisle.
Yeah, they were the last people to arrive. Charles and Camilla, Will and Kate, everyone else was already there with Prince George and Princess Charlotte. And the final ones to arrive were the Queen on the arm of Prince Andrew.
And, he walked her as close to her seat as he could possibly get away with, relinquishing her at the last moment. Now, we had known that this would be the first public sighting of Andrew since he settled the civil suit that was brought against him by Virginia Roberts Giuffre. But I just didn't expect that the Queen would be putting on such a show of support for him.
Yeah, it was a real statement because I think, at the end of the last topical episode that we did, we had said, we'll be interested to see, Andrew's going to be attending this. In what kind of capacity will he be visible at the event? And he couldn't really have been more visible.
Yeah. I mean, it completely dominated all the coverage of the service.
Yeah.
It was on, I think, pretty much every front page.
Yeah.
I really liked the Mirror's headline, "The Pain and the Stain."
Moments like this is when the tabloids really excel.
Yeah.
And pretty much immediately afterwards, we started to get word from royal sources close to other members of the firm about how they felt about the Queen's decision and how unhappy they were with the Queen's insistence on having Andrew by her side. The Daily Mail reported that senior royals had reluctantly accepted that Andrew would travel with the Queen to London because they live so close to each other. Andrew obviously lives at Royal Lodge, which is on the Queen's estate in Windsor.
Just makes sense to carpool.
They were doing it for the environment, really, more than anything. The Daily Mail went on that the senior royals had hoped common sense would prevail and that Andrew would not seek to play a prominent role in his first public appearance since he struck the out-of-court settlement with Virginia Giuffre. A family source said that senior royals, including Prince Charles and Prince William, were dismayed by events and that Andrew's decision to put himself front and centre of the service had caused consternation.
I bet it did. I mean, this was probably the worst call that could possibly have been made. And I thought it was interesting that the Daily Mail piece says that the shamed royal insisted on accompanying the Queen.
Yeah, I think that framing of it as Andrew's decision to put himself front and centre.
And insistence as well.
Like he's some kind of rogue who can't be controlled. Given all we know about the hierarchy of the monarchy, is anybody buying that?
Well, it is quite a believable sentiment, I think, because we've heard that he's very demanding and petulant and that he wants his way and all of that kind of thing.
But it does suggest that the Queen can be very easily manipulated and that she's not really in control of her own institution.
Yeah, but we have since learnt that is absolutely not the case. According to this exclusive in the Mirror, Charles and Will, on more than one occasion, raised their concerns over the optics of allowing Andrew to accompany the Queen to the service. And apparently the future kings were absolutely united that it was simply unnecessary for Andrew to position himself as the only family member to escort the Queen. But well-placed sources have confirmed the monarch told them it was her wish and final decision that Andrew should chaperone her into the Abbey.
My God.
So it was her decision. Shut up, little boys. Mummy has spoken.
I know, and I think it's really striking that all of this came afterwards. Why didn't Charles and Will make more of an effort beforehand if they really were that worried about it, instead of having sources close to them rush out all these quotes about how, well, look, we weren't happy with it either. What good is that to anybody now?
Who looks good in this situation? Not a single person.
It really ended up overshadowing the whole service, I would say. And, we posted on Instagram, you guys probably saw that the press photographer who was assigned to cover the service, Richard Pohl, wrote a piece for The Times in which he described how he had been instructed by palace press officers not to take any pictures of the Queen entering Westminster Abbey, that he could only start taking photos once she was seated. Despite this whole service being broadcast live on the BBC, they said, photos banned until she's in her seat.
Such a weird request.
I know, and he was saying in the piece, maybe people might understand that the Queen should be entitled to some privacy given her age now, but it just doesn't make any sense given that everybody could see what was happening on the BBC.
Yeah.
And then it became even more curious once he learned that Andrew was escorting the Queen. He got a text from outside that was like, good luck. And he told the press officers, I absolutely need to photograph this. But they were still saying no.
Yeah, it's like the level of control is so desperate and kind of mismanaged and doesn't make any sense. But he wrote in this piece that the arrival of the Queen was now the major news event. I could see them wavering, but they repeated that the no picture order came from the top and that it wasn't up to them.
This is absolutely fascinating to me because we have the Queen's decision to have Andrew escort her. That's also coming from the top. And then we hear this rule about banning photos is also coming from the top. Is that also coming from the Queen?
So weird.
But Richard Paul writes that the press officer eventually made a call and gave him permission to take the photos of her arriving. But he then still had to scramble to get into a good position when she came in because everybody stood up. And,
Yeah.
I would say these aren't fantastic pictures, but he obviously did his best to get them. And I'm glad that we have them.
Absolutely, yeah. But I just don't get what the palace was trying to achieve here. Like, all these orders coming from the top, changing their mind, relinquishing the control, like, at the last minute.
Yeah, and I wonder, was it just at the last minute it was decided that Andrew would escort her in? I feel like that must have been planned from at least the day before, given the Queen would most likely have needed some kind of escort on her arrival. But one of the things that I was thinking was that, as we were saying, everyone saw the footage on the BBC, but as it was happening and Tom and I were trying to get a picture to share with you guys, it was hard to get a good quality photo because it was quite low res, quite blurry, the screenshots from the BBC's footage, whereas a good still photo would have much better and longer lasting media value. You can put that on the front page, you can use it time and time again, unlike a kind of shitty blurry little screenshot from a BBC stream. So that was possibly a factor.
Yeah, it's possibly a factor, but I mean, even not having a great photo doesn't stop people talking about it, doesn't stop articles being run about it. So it's not a foolproof solution.
No, but I'm thinking of 5 years down the line.
Yeah.
If you're choosing pics, that shitty screenshot from the BBC is probably not going to be top of the list.
That's true.
Anyway, People magazine had some quotes from royal commentator Robert Jobson, who said people around the Queen are sad that all everyone was talking about is Prince Andrew and not Prince Philip. Sad.
It's just very sad, isn't it?
Yeah, and this was the other day, so it wasn't even in the immediate aftermath of the event. It's very sad. He said, it shows she wholeheartedly loves and believes her son, as she did when she made a statement about Camilla being Queen's consort. Many people will now accept the Queen's word and judgment. Tom, do you accept?
Always. This is such bullshit. No doubt she hopes that everyone accepts her word and judgment, but I really think she's overestimating her power in this situation, but also maybe more generally these days. Public opinion is so against Andrew, and the press have, I think, no interest in rehabilitating his image at all. So, even people...
Nobody does, other than Andrew and his mummy.
Yeah, exactly. But, even people who like the Queen and are kind of generally supportive of her, they're saying things like, well, look, she's his mum and she's got to stick by him. It's more of they're understanding why she's doing these things, but it isn't the same as agreeing with her or believing that Andrew is innocent, and definitely not that he should return to public life and duties.
Yeah, and I think it really illustrates how people who support the monarchy are comfortable picking and choosing when they see the Queen as a mummy or as the head of state.
Yeah.
And that just doesn't wash with me at all. And I think it's really notable the mixed messages that we're getting here, because it was only a few weeks ago before the settlement was made that we had that really hard line. This is the Queen taking a stand on Andrew by taking away his patronages and military titles, almost all of them. And this was the Queen's statement that Andrew was being pushed out.
Yeah.
I think we even called our episode thrown out or something like that.
Yeah.
Because that was how clear the message we were getting from the palace was. that this was the Queen making a very definite stand.
Yeah.
And here we have a complete reversal of that.
Yeah.
This is Andrew's first public appearance since the settlement was made, and the Queen wants you to know she stands by him completely, that he is back in the fold. And I think if this is some kind of attempt to kickstart Andrew's return to public life, it's spectacularly failed here. And as well as the Andrew of it all, it reflects so poorly on the Queen. And I think this is absolutely going to tarnish her legacy right at the end of her life.
Yeah.
This, as people keep calling it, blind spot she has over Andrew is going to be the dominating memory that people have of this period of her life, I think.
Absolutely, yeah. And, you know, it just reinforces, I think, for a lot of people that you can't get rid of a monarch, even when they get to the point where they're making these, like, decisions that no head of state should be making. But yeah, I mean, absolute failure to rehab Andrew's image and kickstart his return to duty, especially as it was followed up by another fresh scandal that involves him.
Yeah, and this one is a little bit complicated, but we will try and clarify it because
Yeah.
we were also slightly confused about what was going on. But anyway, Prince Andrew's name has come up as part of a lawsuit about a potentially unsavoury financial situation. And not only Andrew, but this time Fergie and Beatrice and Eugenie have been dragged into it as well.
Yeah, so very briefly, the situation is that a Turkish millionaire, Nebahat Izbalan, is suing her business advisor, Selman Turk. She's claiming that £38 million of her money has been dishonestly misappropriated, and payments to members of the York family make up a part of this sum. So, yeah, like you're saying, I find almost all financial stories very, very confusing, and I kind of worry about getting things wrong. But I thought we could go through like a timeline of Andrew's involvement with Selman Turk, and therefore why his name is coming up in all of this. But before we do that, I think we should just note that Andrew is not being accused of any wrongdoing. He just happens to be caught up in the middle of another scandal.
So it starts in early summer 2019. So it is quite recent, actually. Andrew was introduced to Selman Turk allegedly by their mutual friend Tarek Kaychouni, who is a convicted gun smuggler. And this introduction apparently happened at a birthday celebration in Windsor Castle.
So many royal properties being linked with unsavoury people. But in July of that same year, Fergie was unveiled as an ambassador for a green energy company called Pegasus. And she will later receive payment via one of Selman Turk's companies called Alphabet Capital for the amount of £225,000.
Yeah, and Fergie has said she's not going to pay this money back because she was working as a brand ambassador, and she says that this is what she was owed by the brand Pegasus.
And the current court case that's going on at the moment has led to uncovering of further payments from this company, Alphabet Capital. So up to £350,000 to Andrew and an additional £20,000 to Fergie. And like, this company has been described by solicitors in this case as a fraudulent and covert front to make payments to those associated with Selman Turk.
Then in October 2019, the princesses come into it because it's been reported that 2 payments were made by Turk to Princess Eugenie, amounting to approximately £25,000. And Eugenie has made a statement about this. The Telegraph reports that she said she understood the money to be gifts from a long-standing family friend to assist with the cost of a surprise party for Fergie's 60th birthday, and that she knows neither Miss Izbalan nor Mr. Turk nor any other details of the claim made by Miss Izbalan's lawyers.
Okay.
I mean, it really just goes to show the kind of world that these girls have been raised in. The idea that you think £25,000 is just a contribution to prepare a surprise party is wild to me.
And also that, like, you know, if £25,000 just turned up in my account overnight, I would be like, okay, where the hell has this come from? What's going on? Like, you'd want to get to the bottom of it, but that just doesn't seem to be an issue in this kind of world.
It does seem that she asked them to pay the money directly to the party planner, and that she said that as soon as the money was paid to her, that she moved it on immediately. But all the same, it is just indicative of the kind of environment that, you know, these royals live in and grow up in.
The amount of money that's just, like, flowing around.
Yeah.
But then in November of 2019, on the 6th of November, there was the annual Pitch at Palace event that was held at St James's Palace, and Selman Turk won the People's Choice Award, which was voted for by the audience, both in person and online, I think. And it was for a pitch for his company, Heyman AI, a digital bank which is aimed at millennials. And he won by, like, a landslide, like, apparently 10,000 votes when many of the other contestants only got like hundreds of votes. And if you go and watch his 1 minute pitch, it's very difficult to see why his pitch is much more engaging than anybody else's. But anyway, we're not going to go into all that, because 9 days later, on the 15th of November, a transfer of £750,000 was made from Isbellin's account to Andrew's personal bank account. Now, Isbellin later said that Turk told her it was in return for assistance with a passport application, a claim that Salman Turk has denied, but she provided an affidavit in court.
She said, Mr. Turk told me that he received help from the Duke of York to show or send the picture of my old passport to Turkey, and that this service would normally be worth £2 million, but it would cost less if we made the payment by way of a gift. I did not understand the nature of the services received then, and have also difficulty explaining it now. I have seen an email from Mr. Turk explaining that this transfer was a wedding gift to Princess Beatrice owing to the close connection between our families. This email is entirely false.
It's so messy. I mean, the Daily Mail has published a transcript of a call between Andrew's then aide, Amanda Thirsk, who we've talked about before. She was also very involved with Picture Palace, and someone from Miss Isbellin's bank, in which Amanda Thirsk said that a payment of £750,000 to be paid to Andrew related to a wedding gift for Beatrice, but there is no suggestion that Beatrice knew anything about it.
This is the same Amanda Thirsk who is said to have encouraged Andrew to do the Newsnight interview.
Yeah, which was around this time, actually.
Which, wow.
Yeah. Great work.
But jump ahead to March of last year. Lawyers acting for Isbellin approached Andrew over the £750,000 payment, which he did repay in full without comment. And, you know, we're not sure at the time of recording what the status is of the rest of the money that was paid through Alphabet Capital, but as we say, he did repay that sum in full.
Yeah, still waiting to hear about the £350,000 from Alphabet, yeah. But we're going to repeat for any lawyers who are listening.
Well, not even just lawyers, but I think it's important for people to know.
No one in the York family is currently being suspected of any wrongdoing in this situation. But, like, that's not really the point. That's not why we want to talk about it. It's not why we think it's important to talk about. Like, once again, we're getting an insight into Andrew's life and the kinds of people that he surrounds himself with. And it's just never flattering.
Yeah, I think it's more a question of his judgment, something that I think people have been questioning for decades. But that this kind of thing keeps coming up. And even though he may not have done anything criminal or anything wrong, it's still, as you say, not a good look.
No way.
For him, and then by extension, his whole family.
Yeah, like, it's not shocking, the stuff about Andrew or even about Fergie. But I was surprised that Beatrice and Eugenie's names came up in relation to it, because you just don't normally hear them mentioned in the same kind of phrases as their parents, like various scandals and stuff. I don't think there was anything like cunning or malicious going on with Beatrice and Eugenie, but like you're saying, it serves to remind you of the kind of world that they live in and the kind of money that's around.
My favourite Andrew-related story of the week, though, was after you had the memorial and this story about the court case on Friday, then on Saturday, Fergie and Andrew had a great idea to help his image rehab. Fergie, as we all know, very active on Instagram, decided to take to Instagram in a move that has been described as leaving AIDS blindsided. She shared 3 posts, main feed posts, with images of Andrew and lengthy captions written by him about his time in the Falklands.
Oh my god, this was absolutely, like, incredible. When we saw that she had done this, and later when we saw that they no longer posted, but in the post itself, she has this, like, short intro in which she says, I asked Andrew this morning for his reflections on the anniversary of his sailing from Portsmouth to the Falkland Islands 40 years ago. And I just think the idea that this is some, like, casual, off-the-cuff request, they were just chatting in the morning and they thought, oh, this might be a good idea. It's so funny.
I actually can't believe, though, that maybe they were sitting around and they were like, my God, this just gets worse and worse. What if we did a sort of spontaneous Instagram, a series of Instagram posts reminding people of when you were a dashing war hero, the time when you were popular for like 1 minute in like 40 years ago.
Yeah. I mean, absolutely, I can definitely see them hatching a cunning plan. But, like, the idea that they want us to believe that this is unrelated to...
Well, Tom, it's really subtly done.
You're right. No, it is very, very subtle.
I just find it amazing that they have these... It sort of reminded me of back at the start of lockdown when Fergie had her assistant post like a carousel of pics of them making a donation to, I think it was a care home or something like that. And included in this carousel of images on this assistant's Instagram was the picture of Andrew holding like a tray of cupcakes or something like that.
I know.
And, you know, he was in like a casual outfit. He was off duty. He's always off duty now. But has he ever been on duty? But he was just chipping in, you know, doing his bit for Britain.
For Britain, for the people of Britain. And, you know, he wasn't trying to make a big song and dance about it. He was actually probably quite embarrassed that these photos made their way onto the Instagram of Fergie's assistant.
And it just seems like that kind of thing where to us it's so transparent.
Yeah.
But to them it probably seems like a very clever way and no one's really going to see what they're trying to do. It's just hilarious to me.
Fergie's going to start her own media training company next. But, like, yeah, you can be pretty sure that this was a joint venture by the two of them, and you can be probably pretty certain that Andrew wrote all this himself because it was originally signed off HRH, the Duke of York, before someone had to update it to remove HRH because he agreed that he wouldn't use that title anymore.
It's so funny. I'm annoyed now I didn't screenshot it because when I saw it and immediately was like, oh my god, Tom, listen to this. But the language that he used was so Andrew and just felt like so of another time.
Yeah, and I mean it was also grammatically incorrect.
Classic Andrew.
He used families with like Y''S when he meant the plural. Like, yeah. But of course the big thing about this was that Fergie had to take down these posts 2 hours after posting them.
It cracks me up when this like gruesome twosome hatches a little plan together in Royal Lodge and they don't tell anyone about it and they think, oh, this is going to be a great success.
And it's very funny because, like, in stark contrast to the Queen making a shit decision and everyone having to go along with it, i.e. Andrew coming to the service with me, when they make a shit decision, someone could just say to them, take that post down. You've been very bad. We're taking away the passwords.
So that was very funny. But speaking of gruesome twosomes.
Oh, yeah. I don't think Charles was probably spending much time on Instagram this week because this new Netflix documentary has just come out called Jimmy Savile, A British Horror Story. Now, like, there are so many documentaries about Jimmy Savile. We haven't watched this one, I'll say that now. But it is notable because of what it's highlighted about Jimmy Savile's relationship with Prince Charles.
Who is Jimmy Savile, just in case people don't know?
Oh, okay. Well, Jimmy Savile was a massive entertainment personality in the UK from like the 70s through to the early 2000s. But he's probably best known now as a prolific serial sex offender, crimes including like paedophilia, sexual assault, anything you can really imagine. You know, I'm sure people listening know about that, so I'm not going to go into them too much.
We have talked about him before on this podcast in relation to how Charles thought of him as something of a mentor, and they had that quite strange relationship. But this documentary sheds a lot more light onto their relationship and how they regularly corresponded for decades. So between 1986 and 2006, Charles basically would go to Savile as, like Tom was saying, this huge media personality. Charles saw him as a great source of media advice.
Yeah, and I mean, you know, it can't really be like overstated how much of a big deal Jimmy Savile was, like at the height of his popularity, and he was like absolutely beloved by the public because people didn't know about what he was kind of getting up to off camera. So it, like, in a lot of ways does make sense that Charles would seek him out for advice, but when you know everything, in hindsight, you're like, what the fuck was he doing? But yeah, so in one letter that they have in this documentary, Charles said to Jimmy Savile, "Perhaps I'm wrong, but you are the bloke who knows what's going on. What I really need is a list of suggestions from you. I want to get to parts of the country that others don't get to reach."
The Times had a piece on the front page by Alice Jones that went into detail about what is featured in this documentary. And she writes that Charles sought advice from Jimmy Savile shortly after Andrew had made ill-advised comments about the Lockerbie bombing in 1988, according to these unearthed letters. So the Lockerbie bombing was an incident when a plane was blown up as it was flying over Lockerbie, a Scottish town, in December 1988, and 270 people were killed. It was the deadliest terrorist attack in British history. But the day after it happened, the Queen thought her presence would distract from recovery work, so she decided to send Prince Andrew instead.
Yeah, I mean, as will come as no surprise, he managed to make things worse. He deeply upset the people of Lockerbie, saying it was much worse for the Americans, and added that it had only been a matter of time before a plane fell out of the sky. The Queen reportedly said to her then Deputy Private Secretary Robert Fellows, "I wish I had gone." I mean, Andrew's incredible lack of empathy for victims was very much present back then too.
But the idea that Andrew is one of the drivers for Charles seeking advice from this very prolific sex offender.
Yeah.
Anyway, so Savile wrote a media relations handbook for Charles, which Charles then went on to incorporate in a memo that was shown to the Queen and Prince Philip. And according to these letters, Savile took on a role as unofficial advisor to Charles, the future king.
I mean, it's really hard to imagine a worse look, really, for Charles than your advisor being Jimmy fucking Savile. But this handbook that he produced is described as an extraordinary 5-page dossier titled Guidelines for Members of the Royal Family and Their Staff. It was handwritten by Jimmy Savile back in 1989, and he lays out his vision for how the royal family should respond to significant incidents.
Yeah, and Charles was 40 at this time when this was happening.
So a man in need of a mentor, I guess. But the director of the documentary, Rowan Deacon, has said that Charles was duped like we all were. The letters show the trust that Prince Charles put into Jimmy Savile. He was trying to appeal to the British people, trying to modernise, and he saw Jimmy Savile as his conduit to that. In hindsight, that was catastrophic. I mean, yes, an understatement, I would say.
He's not the only one, though, defending Charles like this. Royal watchers, royal reporters, they're all quick to talk about how no one knew about Savile's crimes. But that's not true.
I mean, that's never true with men like this. It's never the case that no one knows. In addition to the victims, you also have people around them that facilitate their actions, to greater or lesser degrees. But there are other people involved, and it means that people talk. So even if the authorities, the police, might not want to take victims seriously, the entertainment world is full of rumours, open secrets. We've seen a lot of that kind of thing, gain mainstream exposure in recent years thanks to things like Me Too, when you hear that some individual that maybe you as a member of the public never heard anything about, you find out that within the industry, everybody knew what they were up to.
Yeah, and I think that was one of the big findings of Operation Yewtree, the police investigation into Jimmy Savile's abuse, that found that some members of the staff of the BBC were complicit.
Yeah, and Jimmy Savile himself made jokes, I heavily labour that in quote marks, jokes, and weird asides about his actions. He told this reporter once, the only time you need to punish yourself is when you're with young ladies, because you're such a villain and you're not kind to them and you squeeze them and make them go ouch and things like that.
So disgusting.
Ugh. I mean, I find it hard to believe that Charles, or at least his team, didn't know about these rumours. Had they really not heard any stories? Did they choose not to believe rumours that they heard? Because even back then at the time, other people did act on them. You had British Rail, that was the nationalised rail service in the UK, which no longer exists because it's been privatised. But they actually dropped Jimmy Savile from their adverts in the 80s because of the rumours of necrophilia.
And as Thomas said, he was one of the most famous and most beloved people in the country at that time.
The perfect person for an advertising campaign.
You would think that something like that would give Charles, or if not Charles, some of his staff members pause. But I think, you know, it is the kind of thing, like the reports from Operation Yewtree said, that some people in the BBC did turn a blind eye to Jimmy Savile's behaviour. And I don't think it's impossible that other people associated with Jimmy Savile did the same thing.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know how big this news about Charles has gotten, really. I don't think everyone's talking about it in the way that I feel like they maybe should. But at least this documentary is there, and it's kind of asking the question, or hopefully asking other people to wonder how many paedophiles is the maximum amount of paedophiles that I'm happy for the royal family to be friends with.
But Tom, you know, maybe the royals aren't that worried about this at all, because they have the saviour of the firm at hand, Ms. Sophie Wessex.
I don't know how I keep forgetting about the saviour of the monarchy.
Prince Edward and Sophie are heading out on their own little Caribbean tour later this month, actually.
Giving the people what they've been clamouring for.
Didn't have enough from Will and Kate.
But yeah, they're going to be visiting Antigua and Barbuda, Grenada, San Lucia, and St. Vincent and the Grenadines from April 22nd through to April 28th.
But, Tom, they're going to listen and learn from the Cambridge disaster. The Telegraph had a piece on this by Victoria Ward, and she wrote, "The Wessex's overseas tours have long tended to fly under the radar." Polite way of putting it. But aides will be acutely aware that on this occasion the eyes of the world will be upon them.
I wonder, is the royal family, like, kicking themselves they didn't send these guys over in the first place? Like, do a trial run under the radar, no one will notice, we can iron out all the problems.
Victoria Ward writes that of all the Commonwealth realms, these island nations have made the intention to sever ties with the British monarchy all too clear in recent months. As such, palace officials desperate to avoid pure pitfalls have been carefully studying the Wessex's itinerary ahead of their tour later this month.
Literally their job.
Well, they're being very careful about it now, Tom. And while the Wessexes will certainly want to ensure the focus remains on the Queen's historic 7-decade reign, any potential plans to echo their movements in Grenada by greeting the crowds in an open-top car, as Her Majesty and Prince Philip did on their visit to the country in 1966, will have been quietly shelved. I think this is going to be fascinating to see, you know, if they are pushing out this narrative that they are not going to repeat the mistakes of Will and Kate. You really want to see how much they're taking those mistakes seriously and learning from them. You know, even something as simple as what Sophie's going to wear. I think that would be very illuminating. You know, I don't think people ever pay that much attention to Sophie's clothes in the first place, but this time I am going to be looking at her every outfit with a laser eye focus.
It's going to be so interesting to see what criticisms they think are worth taking seriously.
Exactly.
I can't wait to see that. There was another thing mentioned in this piece which I thought was quite interesting, which is there's a conversation around one of the royal orders that the Queen hands out called the Order of St. Michael and St. George. So this is one that is worn by the Governor General of Grenada, Dame Cecile Le Grenade, and the image on it depicts the white archangel St. Michael trampling the neck of Satan, who is illustrated as a black man.
Yeah, and I think we've actually talked about this insignia before, because I remember around the time of the Black Lives Matter protest resurgence in 2020, there was a lot of questions about whether these kind of images were out of date.
Yeah.
And the Grenada 2050 project has called on the Governor General to stop wearing what they're calling the racist imagery, saying this insignia represents nothing more than the white supremacist belief that the white man is good and superior and the black or dark-skinned man is bad and inferior.
Yeah, and there is precedent for what they're requesting, because in 2020, Jamaica's Governor General, Sir Patrick Allen, declared that he would no longer wear the symbol. So clearly you are allowed to stop wearing this racist brooch if you want to.
Oh, yeah. You don't have to wear it. But in any case, I'm sure we're all waiting with bated breath to hear what Edward has to say when he weighs in on this topic.
But yeah, like you said, this is going to be such an interesting tour to watch. Something I never thought I would say about anything to do with Edward and Sophie.
Yeah, and, you know, whether they do a better job than Will and Kate, I think, is going to be a big question on our minds.
Have they ever had as many eyes on them, do you think?
No way.
Yeah.
Well, their wedding.
Oh, yeah, Possibly, even then. But yeah, I think like it's interesting because the royals are normally like so angry if they don't make the front pages when they do a tour or something. But I do wonder if they're like secretly hoping that maybe they can use Sophie and Edward's secret under the radar power to avoid criticism this time.
So we will be paying close attention to this tour. However, we will be taking the rest of the month off as we are travelling, and then it's Tom's birthday. But we will be back on the 9th of May to talk about the fallout from the Wessex tour. And we will also be looking ahead to the publication of Tina Brown's new book. Tina Brown, who wrote the Diana Chronicles, has a new book, The Palace Papers, coming out.
Yeah.
So we're very interested in what will be contained in that.
Yeah, and then until then, take care.
And thank you so much for listening. Bye.
Bye.
We all need to smile a bit more, because we all need to be kind and smile. And a smile doesn't cost anything, does it? You just smile away and make people happy with a smile.